Hey there, I'm Dustin of Dreichmere. Um, I've been wanting to do a little bit more video content for you guys, specifically regarding the new album. I want to do a couple guitar playthroughs also. And what we have here is I want to do a bit of a deep dive on. For this video, it'll be Wurmian Shroud. I might make another one if people enjoy this one. So let me know what you think, and let me know what other ones you might want to see. I always really like videos where you can get inside the artist's head a little bit, um, and I've been keeping up on the videos that the band have been doing for their song breakdowns on the new album. Well, I guess it's not that new, but of Rotten Ruin. If you haven't checked that out, definitely do that because it's a fucking killer album. I reached out to them to ask what software they were using for that, for those videos, and so that's what I've downloaded. That's what I'm using here, OBS. Um, anyway, uh, not sure where to begin. I've never really made a video like this before. A lot of the feedback I've been getting is on like the drum sound for the Fruit of Barren Fields. So I guess we could start with that. What I'm using is Cult Drums from Ugratone. And I know they've come out with Cult Drums too, which is much more expansive, but I'm still using the original one here. Got the fancy user interface there. And I really liked it because it's very raw sounding. So you can do a lot with it in the mixing stage as far as like kind of shaping the sound for how you want it. Um, and I should say that I'm not a drummer. I started doing drum programming when I started this project essentially, and I've done a couple weird little uh, sort of electronica songs too, which was also sort of semi helpful. Those are on my old YouTube channel that I don't remember the password for and are since lost to me. But anyway, uh, I see this pop up on Reddit all the time, people asking how to program drums. The one thing that I would really suggest is when you're listening to bands you like that um, kind of have a similar drum flavor for what you're going for, just like really key into it. And one thing that I've kind of picked up on, not being a drummer, is how you can use the hi hat to, even if it's playing the uh, same tempo, like just quarter notes or eighth notes or whatever, just simply switching between a closed hi hat and an open hi hat can really make the song feel like it's moving somewhere. Just like little tricks like that. You can try and throw in ghost notes on the snare and whatnot, but um, when I'm writing, I use a software called Tux Guitar, which is similar to Guitar Pro, but it's free. So you can tab out all your guitar parts. You can add in drums on there and kind of build your song in that software. And then what I do is I'll make a copy of it with only the drums in it and then export the MIDI into your DAW. As you can see here, I use Reaper, but you can do the same thing for whatever it is that you're using, be it Pro Tools or Logic or Reason or what have you. And I would also suggest if you're doing it like that, um, if you are in Tux Guitar and you hit the O button on any of the notes on the drum track, it'll put like a little parentheses around it like it's a ghost note. And when you bring that in here, it will duck the velocity down, which, it gives it a more human feel. I go through and I'll show you the the fun stuff here. All these little dots I go through and I touch up a lot of them. Click on the offbeats, drag them down. Like all this just to give it a more human feel. All these different colors you can see are different velocities, and uh, depending on what software you're using, Cult Drums I think has 4 round robins, so that's 4 different layers of velocity on the samples that they have. Um, so if you know what the thresholds are on that, you can really shape your drums for like louder or softer, like harder, softer hits, and make it sound more like a human is playing it, especially if you have like softer parts. Because if you have everything just maxed out, it's going to sound like a robot, which is it's good for some applications, but it's not what I want to do for this project. I want it to sound more like a band, even though it's just me. Um, so, yeah, if anyone has any questions about drum programming and stuff, just reach out to me and I'll try and give you more detailed advice as I can. I'm not an expert by any means, but definitely try to make it something that someone could actually play, make it sound like someone is playing it just by adjusting your velocities on the beats and go from there. Otherwise, there's like Ugertone has a bunch of MIDI packs where the guy behind that he will actually play the beats. So they'll have a beat library essentially, and you can drag and drop those in. You can change them up if you want to, just by like, moving these MIDI notes around. You can get all crazy with it. And anyway, so let's dive into Wurmian Shroud. If you've listened to the album or this song in particular, it's kind of like most of my stuff, it's kind of all over the place. But this one, I did try to go for more of a not a standard song structure, I guess, but more structured, so to speak. So that's why you have a lot of more of like a verse sections with not necessarily choruses, but you have a lot more stuff repeating on this one than I would typically do. And let's see. Yeah, Sarah, who did the vocals on As Golden Dust, I do recall at one point she told me she thought this was my best song. So, yeah, that's part of why I'm doing this one. Also, a lot of people seem to ask for it or want playthroughs for it, which I'll probably do a guitar playthrough for this. I might do the bass too, because I've been itching to bust out that new fretless bass I just got a couple months back. I've been way too busy with classes to really even touch my guitar as much. Although this past month I have been working on some new material. But anyway, yeah, the bass does play a big part in this song, especially in the beginning here, which, why don't we just listen to that? So I will say that probably 80% of this song is just based around one chord, and that is the B major 7th chord. Most of that whole little intro there is, yeah, it's just built around the B 7th chord, B major 7th. Starts on the B, goes up through the chord, does like a little sort of melodic fill at the bottom. Sorry, excuse me. It starts on the seventh of the B on the low string, and then goes up through the chord, does a little melodic fill, and that's pretty much that section there. And then in the next part, the guitars come in, and they kind of mirror that until the song swells up a little bit after like a couple repeats there. But this little thing in the beginning is just one of the other parts of the song. I forget which one, but it's just that reversed. I like to start songs out with that for whatever reason. I know I did that on Scenery as well. I just think it kind of has like a spooky feel to it, especially if you throw a bunch of reverb and shit on it. And the drums are super simple in this part. It's just the low floor tom with a little bit of accent from one of the other toms and the kick. You have like the little cymbal swells there. And then, yeah, once the drums actually kick in, the guitars kick in. So you got this whole first section here with that same riff, and then the drums pick up a little bit more when the vocals come in. Should be right around here. Yeah, so that little interlude part where you have those guitar swells start to come in, I tend to use those a lot. I like how they sound. If I had a volume pedal, I would use that, but as you can see here, I just will play the notes and then shape them with the fade ins and fade outs here. And if I remember correctly, yeah, I have these in this part panned out 25% each, so they kind of go in and out between each ear, not all the way but just slightly, just kind of give it a little bit more space in the stereo spectrum. And it's mostly the main tone here. You have that little drop there, that descending part, which is just the gain from the Tube Screamer. I have a Tube Screamer Mini that I use. The main tone on this whole album was the same. It's oh, the cat is here. It's really simple. I just play through my Black Star. I've got my settings on that, and I've got the Tube Screamer Mini. The gain is set all the way down on that, so it's mostly just the gain of the amp. Although obviously there's a little bit of fuzz coming from the Tube Screamer, but not very much. So in those little descending parts, it's the clean channel on the amp and then just the Tube Screamer. Let's see if I can solo that here. So after that little tiny interlude, the riff changes up a little bit. It's still rooted on the 7th of the B, but it has some more extensions on it, and the rhythm is changed slightly. So I should say all this song is in 4/4, but a lot of the stuff I really love is in 6/8, like a lot of black metal's in that, and I feel like that always gives it sort of a more, for whatever reason, it feels more nature-y. Like Opeth is in 6/8, like half the time at least. For whatever reason, a lot of stuff I write is not in 6/8. It ends up being more 4/4, 3/4, bouncing around that 7/8 on some phrases. But one thing I use a lot is dotted quarter notes, which kind of it gives it that 3 count on a lot of parts of the riffs. So it kind of it doesn't necessarily have that 6/8 feel, but it kind of implies sort of a more lilting feel to it, I guess. I don't know. So that plays heavily on this whole intro section. There is a lot of dotted quarter notes. Yeah, so why don't we listen to just that next section with all the guitar crescendos and whatnot. Another thing, in the beginning here, the 2 rhythm guitars are playing the same thing, and then once like this next portion kicks off, they are doing like sort of a harmony, I guess. So they're both playing something different. So we'll solo those. So that's the left, and then the right is doing something very similar, but instead of holding that dotted quarter, it's going straight 8th notes on the low strings there. And the vocals are just doing their thing there. What I would typically do now is I would do some little fade-ins on here. Obviously, I didn't think of that at the time. And I do like to leave sort of that initial breath in right before the vocal kicks off. It doesn't really pop out in the music all the time, but I feel like it adds just a little bit more of a live feel to it, even when the vocals kind of run over each other and whatnot. We can solo part of that here if anyone wants to hear that. Not that you're here to tell me, of course, but so let's see what that sounds like. So yeah, most of the time I do the vocals single tracked. I don't do a whole lot of doubling. If I do, it's more for like an accent, just to make a part pop a little bit more, like that big scream at the end there. You've got the lows and the highs coming together. One reason is I personally just like the sound of my vocals just by themselves. Another reason is I'm not super tight as a vocalist, so doing like exact double takes is not something I'm very good at. I don't practice it enough. I mean, I really don't practice vocals at all these days. I just kind of go for it. But back to the bass. So I've got two main bass tracks on here. One's the clean bass, and one is the distortion bass. Both of them are recorded DI. And on this album, I had rented a P bass with flat wound strings from a local music shop, so that's what I recorded all this with. I actually found the flat wound strings were really nice to play. Whatever the ones they had on that kind of had like a almost like a coating on it or something. Um, and that was really nice for me because I never practiced bass. So I think I did 90% of all these bass lines for the whole album in one day, which took me like 14 hours. So those smooth, silky strings were really nice because my fingers were not really torn up by the end of that. Um, but as far as the bass tone, um, like I said, it's DI into the Focusrite, but before that, I have an art, and I should apologize for my squeaky chair. I've got a Art Tube MP Studio tube preamp, and I also have the Tube Screamer Mini in front of it too. So I think even on the clean bass, it's still going through that, although I can't remember if it was on or off. So it might just be a pass through. And then, so both of those tracks are going into the main bass bus here, which I think is mostly just for, it's got a whole bunch of stuff on it. A little bit of gating, couple ducks here, compression, the main EQ, some multiband compression here, which I think just affects the lower frequencies, another compressor. This thing that I like a lot, it's I forget who makes this, but there's like a few different plugins they make, and this one I used for a little saturation on the lower frequencies, to give it a little bit more harmonic content. That's one thing I learned. So I took before I did the mixing for this album, I took one of Jordan Valeriet's courses for mixing, and one of the tricks that he points out is to use stuff like saturation to add more like harmonic content to some of your stuff, especially like on the bass. If you do that with the lower frequencies, that harmonic content will be in the higher registers, and so it'll translate better on smaller speakers, which a lot of people just, pull out their phone and listen to stuff on that. So that definitely helped. And I think I used this for the same thing, just like a bunch of saturation on the bass. And then you've got the limiter there. So it's a lot of stuff. Some of it was trial and error, just seeing what sounded good. On the clean bass, there's more compression, and then I've got this thing, which is the same as that. Well, it's not the same. It's the same company that makes that other thing I was using for saturation. This one, yeah, if you drive the brilliance and the amp up, it adds a lot of sort of high-end distortion-y niceness. Sometimes it doesn't sound good, but for that, it just kind of made the top end of the bass pop a little bit more. And this one, I used it on the distortion bass as well. And the main distortion for the bass is going through this the soft amp PSA. So that's the main bass tone. So we can kind of hear the difference here on those. So that's the clean bass and the dirty bass. And when I'm tracking bass, on the first record I used all finger picking, but after that I realized that my fingers are not quite quick and precise enough to pull that off for some of the other songs that I have on this album. So everything is tracked with an ebony pick. I kind of found that the wood has a nice tone to it. It's not quite as clacky as the plastic pick, and it's not quite as dull as the felt pick. So it's kind of like a nice in between. So if you're looking for something, give that a try. Uh, anyway, that was a bit of a long tangent all on this first part. So then there's sort of this interlude here, which gets a little spacey. And I did not actually write the lyrics until probably a year or two after all these songs were written. And then I was struggling to figure out which order to put them in. But it ended up working out because this song lyrically is a bit of a flashback to the origins of the protagonist, to like 10,000 winters ago, as is stated in the intro here. So this sort of like spacey interlude kind of works for that, I think. As sort of like traveling back through time and winters and whatnot. So when I first started writing this song, as you could hear by like sort of the doominess of the beginning, I was shooting for something that would turn into more like a funeral doom track. But it feels like whenever I point myself in a direction and like I want to do this, it does not at all work like that. By the time I'm done with the song, I just kind of have to go with whatever I come up with and take it from there. So like I said, most of this is based around that B major 7th chord. So this next part has a bit of like a wandering on the bass, and then the clean guitars come in with the bass and just ride that B major 7th again, but with a different rhythm and sort of another chord extension added onto it, which would be what is that, like the major 2nd, I think. So it's major 7th, major 2nd, I don't know. My music theory is pretty rusty, but we can listen to just part of that. And also coming in here to make it even more spacey, I've got a couple like little synth and guitar parts here. I didn't really use much synth on the album. It's something I want to do more if I can get around to it on future stuff, but just in very small parts on the album I used it to just kind of accent some things, like here. So that's happening while the bass starts playing sort of a little melody, rhythm, whatever you want to call it. And I've got a real spacey guitar with a lot of delay on it here behind that, just playing like single notes and like 2-string little chords here to kind of accent it a bit. And I do really like the drums for this part. They're super simple, but I felt they're very effective, and I liked the sound I got with a lot of automation on the reverb. Automation was a big thing that I learned a lot about on this mixing this album. You can kind of like help build your songs up and down just with simply automating stuff, which is really handy. But anyway, yeah, why don't we listen to everything here real quick? And then everybody rides that chord. So then that part kind of repeats, and then kind of tapers off. We have these little lead parts. Excuse me. These little lead parts here to lead into the main riff, which also jumps up in tempo by 45 BPM. So why don't we listen to that here? I think these two guitars are just playing the same thing. And I forget what this is. I think it's the synth again. Yeah, just to give another sort of layer into this transition. I should say that transitions are not my strong suite yet. It's something I'm always working on. Definitely a weak spot on the first album. Less weak on this one, I think, but still a bit of a struggle sometimes because I just get too many ideas for one song and I just struggle to jam them all together. But anyway, so yeah, we have this little transition here before we go into the main riff, which again is just the B and then the major seventh kind of alternating on like a little pattern, which I think it's all in 4/4 technically, but the main phrase is probably more like a 5/4. So it has kind of a off-kilter feel to it, so it was a little tricky to write a drum pattern for it. But I think it worked out okay. So why don't we just listen to that? I think the bass mostly just has a little groove going with the drums on the next part. And then that little middle part is more straight 4/4 to kind of bring it back to ground a little bit. And that is just sort of a little walking descent on the A sharp with like a minor 6 and a fifth. Pretty simple. So that continues twice. And you've got the vocals behind it, and there are a lot of vocal layers on the clean parts. Originally, my hope was to do some clean singing, but I am not a very good singer, so I had to improvise a little bit. I think I did keep some of my attempts at singing, which, here, I'll show you why I did not use those. Yeah, so those did not sound good. So I ended up settling with a mix between whispers and sort of what I call the croak, like the Danny Filth croak. Like sometimes he does that little croaky voice when he's doing some nice florid poetry in your ears. So I tried to emulate sort of a similar sound. It's got a lot of delay on it. And I also have like some pitch shifted whispers, which I think that might be this here. Nope. Ah, that's this. So this is the pitch shifted vocals here, and that also has just regular whispers layered on top of it. So we've got this. And as you can hear, my preamp is super noisy, which is not super helpful, but we make it work. So we got the pitch shifted ones, which I think is just that exact same thing, just copied down into this track. The seasons were mired in gray. And I got the idea for that from some of like the shit in like Deathspell Omega, where it has that sort of spoken word shit that doesn't sound like a normal human could do it. So it's not 100% pitch shifted though. It's at 85, so some of the original still comes through. And yeah, so you got all these layers here. The seasons were mired in gray. The heavens stood in languid streams. Tempest thrashing on silver mirrors, horns caressed the gibbous moon. And as you will hear in a moment, yeah, this is literally just whispers, but just pitch shifted. Tempest thrashing on silver mirrors, horns caressed the gibbous moon. So yeah, it gives it like sort of an otherworldly feel, which was perfect, because I really wanted this track to be kind of off-putting and unsettling. So yeah, after that all happens, then the distorted guitars come back in and just play like kind of a, you know, just a didn't sort of thing. And the main inspiration for a lot of this song was like old school Catatonia, like Nowhere and At Last, where you have that that clean or acoustic guitar going on behind the distorted rhythm guitars, and it kind of walks that line between beautiful and eerie, and sometimes it's both. So that's really what I kind of wanted to do with this track, was just take those couple parts where they do that and see what you could do if you made a whole song eerie and beautiful and off-putting all at the same time. So yeah, the rhythms there are just super simple. It's just kind of following the clean guitar parts, which again are still just riding that B major 7th there. And so those little donut parts are just a B major 7th, and then when it goes into the straight 4/4, it's just an octave chord on the A sharp behind that little walk on the cleans here. So we'll listen to that real quick. So yeah, super simple. And then each of these sections is ended with that little, you can see them all here, that little acoustic bit, which is just like a little descent with some open strings on the top end there, and the bass kind of follows it. So then that all repeats, those two sections there twice, and then you have this little tremolo picked bit, and so I don't do blast beats on it initially here. I do kind of like a little pattern on the hi-hat instead. One of the things that I often do is try as hard as I can to avoid what I think would be not my first instinct, but like the sort of the default, I guess, which would be, oh, I'm picking fast, let's throw some blast beats on it. So I try to always do something a little different, which is why I don't have a ton of riffs where I'm just riding the E string and throwing some chords on it or whatever. I tend to think of things more in terms of like textures rather than straight up riffs where you're headbanging to it. I do want you to headbang, but yeah, I guess, I don't know. I'm not trying to do just like a standard riff. I'm trying to like paint a broader picture with the parts, and pretty much everything that I play is fairly simple. Like, I'm not a super great guitar player, especially considering I've been playing for like 12 years now. I'm a pretty shitty guitar player, but yeah, I try to just do something a little different. Like, the parts are simple, but the songs as a whole are big, complicated monsters that some people like, some people don't like it. It's whatever. I play what I want to listen to. So yeah, the next part is a little tremolo picked bit, kind of foreshadowing that there will be more black metal later in the song. And even that part is implying the B major chord. It's the B, the third, and then the diminished fifth of the B. And I think the one guitar like does like a little bit of a harmony against that at the end of the phrase. Yeah. So the two of them together. And then it goes back into the verse, the main riff, with all the whispered layers and stuff. And then jets into, you know, the distorted riff with the growls behind it. So I'm not really going to jump into that because that's just a repeat. And then it plays the same tremolo picked part there. But then the riff changes and it plays the B major 7th chord again, but it's descending through it. So it starts on the 7th, goes down to the root, and then down a fret on the low E to the 6th fret, which is the major 7th of the B. And that's pretty much that whole riff. And the drums kind of start picking up and doing like the black metal blast, where it's pretty slow. Like, none of my shit is very fast, but it's that alternating kick and snare pattern. I can't remember if that's called the skank beat or something, maybe. Anyway, we'll check that out, see how it changes. Yeah, so that riff gets ended by this little gallopy thing that is foreshadowing something else later in the song, which is just that part but expanded. Um, and we do have a vocal layer here, which I think I just ran out of reverb channels, so I threw that up here along with the main vocal for just one line here. I think it's just the word wood. So we'll just listen to that whole part, see how that makes that pop a little more.
It's for them from the solitude of the wood.
Pretty simple. And so yeah, you've got that little and I think, if I remember correctly, the rather than just following that with the kick, what the kick is doing that little gallop after, maybe? I don't know, let's check that out. Oh no, I think that's how I had written it originally, was have like a straight beat and then have the kick do like a 16th note thing after the guitar does it, but kind of a call and response. But I think I literally changed it because I was having trouble playing it in time without the kick to guide me. So that does that twice, and then it goes into like the actual proper black metal bit of the song, which is fairly short. It's a really simple riff, but I thought it was very effective. It kind of slides up from that little gallopy part and then descends on kind of the lower strings there, and the drums will play a part, and then it goes into that same alternating kick snare pattern, go back to the main beat, and then it goes into like some proper blast beats. With the bass is mostly just kind of following along with that rise and fall there. So we'll listen to that real quick. I was pretty happy with how the vocals turned out on that part, especially that last little scream there. Like, I can't do super high shrieks at all, but I was pretty happy with like how that sounded there.
Involves me.
And as you can see, the vocals are like fairly dry. I never do any distortion or anything on my growls. Just a standard EQ, compression, limiter, and then, you know, run it through whatever delay and reverb makes it kind of sit in the mix nicer. So we can listen to that just raw by itself there.
Involves me.
We still have the effects bus. My bad. Yeah, a lot of stuff gets routed to these channels at the end of the mix here. We've got like a delay here, stereo delay, vocal stereo delay, vocal mono delay, your all-around reverb, basic stereo delay, and then a doubler for some stuff. So we'll just mute all of that and just get the vocal by itself there.
Leprous mouths of twinkling faith, they invokes me.
Yeah, so that's what Dustin sounds like without any stuff on him. A lot of times when I record, especially like on this album, I kind of figured out where all the stuff fits kind of as I go, which is why you see a lot of takes here, because I have in my head exactly how I want every vocal line to sound. So if I don't do it just so, then I stop and I do it again and again and again. And that was another fun thing about this album was all the vocals about halfway through the winter long. So 5-ish tracks of vocals I did all in one day over a period of, I don't know, 6 or 8 hours or something. And I'd never had a migraine before, but I definitely had one after that because I'm kind of going deaf, I feel like, from listening to all the metal. So I had, of course, the mix just blasting in these headphones while I'm screaming my guts out. I had to squeeze it all in one day because at the time I was living in a duplex, and the downstairs lady, I think, had heard me listening to metal, and so she always seemed scared of me whenever I came outside. So I waited until one day when she was gone, and I just had to cram it all in, and then I finished up the other ones on another day that she was gone. And also to avoid from displeasing her, I built a isolation box for recording all the rhythm guitars. So that was a fun little project, but kind of pricey. Like, that insulation is expensive. But I am happy I did it because I think the guitars ended up sounding pretty great on here. Definitely a big step up from the first album. And I could really crank it in there, and it didn't. I could barely hear it in the room. It was like not much louder than me just like talking to you. But anyway, another big tangent. So after the black metal section, I take that riff, or that little portion that ended the second tremolo picking riff, and I think I repeat it 5 times, which is kind of an odd number, and then we slow it down. Yeah, so we drop down 15 BPM for this part, so it's not quite a breakdown because it's not all chuggy and shit, but you've got the one guitar just playing the root notes, sort of with that dotted quarter note pattern there. I forget which side that is. I think it's this one. Nope, it's the other one. So you got the one side doing this. Kind of nasty. And then I think it throws in a little arpeggio in here somewhere. Yeah. And so the other side is doing like the little gallop bit. So they kind of complement each other. It's like the same note, just an octave up on this one for the F sharp. So together. also got this little lead spooky bit in here. And that comes back here because we go back to the sort of the main riff for a little bit, and I wanted to give it something just a little bit extra because I felt like I'd repeated it way too many times at this point. Because I'm always afraid of stuff coming out boring, which is why a big part of why I'm always changing up riffs, and I think why I kind of write in a more linear fashion. I don't think I'm ever confident enough in any one riff to repeat it a whole bunch of times, but I really liked this one, so that's kind of why I built this song the way I did. So that lead is kind of implied again, just here. It's just playing like one little like major seventh or minor second chord, whichever way the root note goes. I can't remember on this, but it's just... So it gives like a little eerie feeling to this repeat of the main riff here. And that repeats again with the same distorted rhythm guitars there. And the cat has joined me. So yeah, that plays again. I did really like the vocals on this part too. Like I said, I can't scream super high, but I did like how this one turned out here. Sorry, I think the cat laid on the webcam wire. Yeah, so then the next section is the same rhythm, pretty much the same drum beat, but it moves up to the third of the B and moves around from there, and instead of being like a major seventh dyad, it's just octave chords, so just alternate picking on the octaves there. And the bass also changes to something a little bit more lively, but still pretty much the same rhythm. So we'll listen to that a little bit, kind of like an interlude, bit of a build. There's only one clean guitar in this part. Again, I think it's got a lot of delay on it, and actually most of the delays on the guitars on this whole album were with the Donner Yellow Fall pedal. So we can listen to that a little bit here. Oh yeah, and there's the feedback in here. That's something I used a lot more on this album, just to kind of give like a, I don't know, more of a haunting vibe to stuff. And because my speaker cab was in the isolation cabinet, I couldn't hold my guitar in front of the speaker. I could get a little bit of feedback when I held it up to my studio monitors, because everything was running through that also at the time. So as you can see, sometimes I would record a bunch of different feedback parts and just mash them all together into one thing, and it turned out okay. Yeah, I did really like the bass line on this part. kind of a little. It's not really jumpy, but it's got a nice groove with the drums there. Yeah, so then the distortion guitars come back again, playing like some minor thirds to complement those octave chords. And then instead of just like an octave riff when it goes into the straight 4/4 bit, it has a riff with like a little bit more movement to it. On this part here. So we'll listen to just that by itself. Throw in the bass. So I don't use the bass to just follow the root note all the time. I try to use it a little bit more as like another melodic instrument. So I try to do a little bit more creative stuff with it. But sometimes on riffs like this, it is nice to just follow that root note and let the stuff to like just jam out. And that same part on the clean guitars, just this little bit here. That repeats for the rest of the song. And that distortion riff, it plays a couple more times here. And then the riff changes again to the lower strings to get it a little bit heavier. It's still a similar riff, so we'll listen to how that changes here, because it might be hard to hear it exactly when the full mix is going on. Hold on, we'll back up a little bit here. So you've got that, and then yeah, after that riff on the distortion guitars changes, we add in an acoustic guitar playing the same little octave run as the clean guitars, just for a little bit more. It's supposed to be sort of a crescendo here at the end. So you've got this going on. So that repeats a few times. The drums like really start picking up a lot. We'll do that with just the just that acoustic guitar, I guess. Probably sure you know, then the little lead solo thing comes in the end to just put the final polish on. Originally, I think the song faded out here up until where the solo comes in now on the final version, but I felt like it just needed something more, so I just repeated all the background riffs and stuff, and came up with this little thing over the top here. I'm definitely not a shredder by any means at all. Uh, I experimented with a little bit of just really easy single note tapping on this album. So that's on like this part right here, and in the solo on the first track, Pfingstlich. Uh, yeah, I really cannot play very fast, uh, even for like rhythm guitars, but I really liked how this turned out. Um, so yeah, we'll listen to the crescendo, and then the song does end up fading out as that happens here. Yeah. So just some single string tapping, and then go up to those higher frets, throw in some tremolo picking. So it's really very a simple part. It just I was trying to do stuff that was in my ability within my abilities that's made it sound fancier than it actually is. So this is what this sounds like. And as you can hear, I can't even do that simple part super clean, but in the context of everything, I think it sounded pretty good. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the song. That's how I wrote it. That's how I came up with it. If you have any questions, let me know. Let me know if you want to see another one of these videos where I kind of dive in here. If there's anything else you want me more specifically to focus on, like drum sound, guitar sound, I can show you what my settings are on my amp because I think they're still the same as they were when I recorded this because I really like the guitar sound I got. Yeah. Anything you want to know, let me know. I'll tell you. I'm an open book. So yeah, look out for this guitar playthrough. Hopefully soon. My classes are starting again next week, and I also work full time, and I also try to work on this project. So I'm a bit of a busy bee, but I will try to kind of stay on top of things so I can keep on putting out more content because I know I have a tendency to go on radio silence for way too long on this project. But yeah, guitar playthroughs, more merch coming soon, more music hopefully in the next year. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll see you later. Thanks for your support.